Hi, this is Ronick for Ask.Audio, and we're taking a quick look at the new IK Multimedia Uno Synth. The Uno Synth is a 2-oscillator, fully analog monophonic synthesizer. It is lighter than you can imagine. Not only does it have 2 analog oscillators, it also has an analog noise generator and an analog multimode filter. However, there are digital envelopes, a digital LFO, but this little beast contains an arpeggiator, a sequencer, a capacitive, how do you say it, keyboard, and enough to keep you going. At a price point of $199, it certainly caught our attention. And as you can hear, we're actually syncing it right now with the Arturia drum brute impact. So that is providing the MIDI clock, and the Uno is the slave. Alright, let's take a look at the Uno. So one of the cool things about the IK Uno synth, apart from being analog in a tiny form factor, is that it can save presets. You can have up to 100 presets. These are already written into the machine, and 20 of them are the factory settings that can't be changed, and 80 can be modified. Each preset can have its own, has its own sequencer pattern as well. And this is a 16-step sequencer. So to get through the presets, you simply press preset, make sure the light is lit there above it, and use the data up-down arrows. And these are useful for many, many different functions. And we can just use the keyboard to preview the sounds. You know, I find the sounds of the Uno really good. They don't blow me away in the way that some synthesizers do, but we're talking about a $200 synthesizer here. For what it is, I think it's very, very good. You won't get earth-shattering low, basses necessarily. You might need to add some processing, but generally speaking, this is really, really, really cool. Okay, so over here on the top left, we've got the matrix area, which is where you can really get into editing and adjusting the sound of your preset. Okay, so we start with these 4 knobs. Now they are not, they're user defined if you like. You can define it depending upon which of these buttons is pressed and lit up. Right, so you've actually got 5 possible settings here. Now it looks like there's 4. I'll show you where the 5th one is. To start with, we have the oscillator selected. So the first knob selects wave 1, so the wave shape. You can go between saw, triangle, square, and pulse. And you can hear that quite nicely with this sound. And the same for oscillator 2 as well. You can get some nice kind of modulated sound going on here. You can tune these too. Now the annoying thing for me personally, about this kind of system, without there being any lights to tell you where the setting was saved for that particular parameter, is that is a bit of guesswork involved when you start adjusting something like the cutoff, for example. The upcoming software editor will allow you to adjust the knob behavior to be relative, so that if your setting was at 50 and the knob was down at 5, the sound won't change until the knob reaches the value of 50, for example. Back to the matrix area. So we can also adjust the filter as well. The mode, you have 3 settings: low pass, high pass, band pass. You can choose the resonance here. I find that in a slightly odd place. I prefer to have a separate control for the resonance knob, or a little bit easier to access rather than pressing filter and then reaching for the second from the left knob here. But it does the job. You can get growly, as you can hear now. And you've got a drive as well. Envelope, where you can set the filter attack and decay and the amplitude attack and the release. And then the LFO, you can choose the waveform for the LFO here, the rate and the pitch. And the filter. So you've got these kind of dive expression buttons, I would call them. Vibrato, wah, tremolo, and of course the hold, which works in arpeggiator mode and when you're not as well, which is quite cool. So you can just keep one note pressed down, which is quite nice. Right, on to the, well, for the keyboard we want to also look at things like the scale. So you can actually choose a different scale which changes the white keys. I think you've got about 14 or 15 scales built in here. It's possible that IK will release an update in the future that will add to that. But for now we've got these different scales. And again, you use the data selectors here at the top to select those. You need to turn scale off in order to actually try it out. So we've got some numbers. I think number 10 is Spanish Gypsy. I'm going to go back to chromatic. Okay, and of course we've got octave up and down, so you can treat this like a much larger keyboard. Let's bring that down a bit. Okay. A couple of other things I quite like on this machine is you can choose to have a metronome playing, which is always useful when you're recording stuff. So you can just simply turn it on or off from here. It won't, which is slightly upsetting for me, is that you won't hear the metronome if you simply hit the play button and get a sequence playing. Only when you're in record mode. There, you can hear it now. Okay, so onto the arpeggiator and the sequencer, which is really, both are really, really cool. Let's choose a different preset. I'm liking that. So one of the coolest parts of the arpeggiator for me is just the whole button. It's really, really simple to do, really easy to use. I think because the keys are so close together, makes it very, very easy to use and then to adjust the parameters here as well. I'm liking that. Okay. Oh, and did I mention that we have a digital delay as well? Well, it's just here. You can choose the mix. Now, if you get bored of tapping this button continuously to go up and down single digits, you can hold it down and it goes up, I think, in like 8 or so increments. Adjust the time as well. It's a digital delay. I think personally they could do a little bit more with it, add a few more controls, but for what it is built into the machine, it's kind of useful and kind of nice. And of course you've got the tempo here as well. Which can go up to a whopping 299 BPM, which most of us are probably not going to go quite that far. Right, and what about the sequencer? Well, let's have a look at that. Okay, I'm going to choose a different preset altogether. Let's see. That sounds nice. So, you simply hit sequencer here to turn it on and hit the play button. And every preset has its own sequencer pattern. I wish you could have more than one sequencer pattern per preset, but right now that's not the case. Let's choose a different. Okay, this is kind of nice. So let's say we wanted to create our own sequence or our own pattern here. Well, this is what we've got right now. It's quite simple. You can actually also record actual settings as well, 2 different steps that you've recorded in. There's a number of ways. I'm just going to show you a couple of ways. Yes, you can record in real time if you want to, but let's just look at how you do a step kind of pattern. Actually, first, before I do that, once you play it, if you want to clear the pattern completely, hold down Alt and hold down this button too. And there you go, you've got now a clear pattern. If I go, let's turn this up. If I go up a preset and down one, you'll notice that it comes back because I haven't saved the preset. So let's say I wanted to remove this. There's no sequencer pattern there now. I can actually record over this preset by holding down the preset button until it flashes. It tells me it's number 46. You can actually save to a different setting, or let's say, you know, come back to 46. I just hit preset again and it's saved, and there should be no sequencer data attached to that preset now. Alright, so let's program one in from scratch, a really simple one. It might be musical, it might not. Let's find out. So as soon as you hit record without play running, you'll notice that the first step begins blinking. You can move up and down the steps using the up and down data settings. Once you tap a key here, it basically assigns that key to that step. So let's stick with that one. Move up a couple of steps. Move up again. And let's see what that sounds like. Currently, as of this version of Uno Synth and the software inside, you can't apply any swing to the patterns, but that's just the way it is right now. So that's one way of recording. So let's say you want to automate a sequence in terms of not just the notes being played, but the parameters, so the settings. So you could, for example, have a different cutoff setting for a different step. Well, here's a sequence which is quite a happy sequence, should we say. Nice and uplifting. So how would you do that? Well, you hold down the record button and the Alt button, and then you hold down the step. So let's say this step, and then you tweak the parameter. So let's start off with something like that. Right, let's see what it sounds like. So in theory, you could do that quite, for all the parameters. A little bit laborious, I find, but it's something which is useful. IK will be releasing an app as well. I believe that will be for Mac and PC, maybe for iOS. I don't know at this stage, which will probably give you greater access to automation and to storing settings, maybe even transferring settings too. So this is a brief overview of the IK Uno Synth. There's a lot more you can do with it. There's some really cool stuff, and you can also, for example, integrate it with a drum machine like the Arturia Drum Brute Impact. So to sync up the Uno synth, you simply use this Alt key, choose Sync here from this black key at the top, and use the data up-down arrows to select. So we can choose the internal clock, which means everything is powered internally via the Uno synth. USB, so you get the clock signal via USB, via your DAW on your computer, or external, so in this case via 5-pin MIDI that goes into the breakout cable here into the Uno and provides the clock. And it's as simple as that. And then of course you can choose a different preset, choose a setting on the drum beat that you like, so for example this drum pattern, and I could either play in like an arpeggiated pattern, One of the oversights for me is that when you're playing in an arpeggiated pattern and you choose hold, when you choose a new preset, it doesn't follow, so you have to now play in your pattern again. Let's choose a better preset. But either way, you can tell it syncs, so I can now change the tempo on the drum brute. You can hear quite clearly and see, using the lights, how the Uno responds. So you can stay in sync that way. And of course the sequencer works too. And with the sequencer, we didn't really look at in depth before, you can change the direction. So hold the direction key down here, use the data up down arrows. You can see we're in forward right now. So now we're going to play it in reverse. Back and forth. And forward again. I mean, that's quite powerful for a small sequencer, small portable sequencer like this one on a synthesizer. And similarly, you can use the arpeggiator. You can also change the direction of that, up, down, just down, random, as you've played it, etc, etc. There's loads of modes here to explore. So what do I think of the Uno synth? Well, it's battery powered. I've actually got it plugged into USB right now, but I really don't need to. You've got on the back here, by the way, in case we didn't look at this before, you've got the off, the battery mode and the USB power. You've got MIDI in and out. You have an audio out and an audio in. It's really, really light, this machine. I can't stress that enough. It is a bit plasticky. It is easy to trigger notes without meaning to when you pick it up. It is also very easy to modify another setting, another control, one of these four controls, because they're very, very close together. So you could quite easily just nudge those by mistake. So you've got to be careful about that. You've really got to kind of grab it from the top and really move it like that. And I don't have huge hands. So for those with particularly large hands, this might be a little bit fiddly. The build quality, well, it's sturdy enough in this machine itself. It's quite, you know, it's okay. It's fine. I wouldn't recommend leaving large objects on top of it or shoving it in a bag and sitting on it, for example. I still think you'd need some protection for this because it is a little bit plasticky, and because it's got a capacitive keyboard here, it does require touch, so it is a little bit more fragile here. Other points to note are that it's $200, really. You know, if you've been used to using plug-in synthesizers, virtual instruments, you could quite easily spend over $200-300 for one of those. Here you've got something which is analog, truly analog, with digital delay, digital envelopes, and basically it's tactile too. It's portable, so you can just unplug it from everything, chuck some batteries in, put your headphones in, and you've got a synthesizer on the move. I do really like it. I think the sounds are good. they're fairly warm in places. You can get some nice deep sounds, not earth-shattering basses. For $200, I think it's a really good price and a really good entry synth. I would be surprised if IK Multimedia don't start introducing other instruments that could fit into this Uno synth range. I'm not talking a polyphonic synth at this stage. I'm thinking other things that could connect up to it, perhaps in the whole Korg Volca kind of way of doing things. But as it is, if you've got drum machines or other things that sync up via MIDI, then they can just plug straight into this already. So it's really good. It's tiny. You can see it's really tiny, but that's a good thing. So I hope you enjoyed this overview and review of the IK Uno synth. This is Ronik Sethi for Ask.Audio. Please subscribe to the video and come and check out the Ask.Audio Academy, where you can learn from professional trainers all about synthesis, all about recording, arranging, mixing, mastering, the whole gamut of topics for music producers. Thanks for watching.